It's time for Come and Talk It with your host, Michael Cargill, brought to you by Texas Law Shield. Over the last decade, Michael has championed and supported the rights of law-abiding Texans to own and use firearms. He is the owner of Central Texas Gun Works, a veteran of the United States Army, and has achieved national exposure in such prestigious media outlets such as Forbes Magazine, Fox Business News, CNN Money, AOL, BBC World News, Huffington Post, and the New York Times. Cargill vigorously defends lawful gun ownership in this country without regard to party politics. And now, here's Michael Cargill.
Item on the ballot, reinstating Austin's public camping ban. Here are the latest results that we are seeing right now. 59% are for and 41% are against. An estimated 78% of the votes are in. KXAN City Hall investigator Kevin Clark joins us in the studio right now. And Kevin, we know you've been working to find out what comes next.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And if early voting numbers are an indication, Prop B would pass. But even if the ban comes back, that doesn't mean it will take effect right away. It was nearly 2 years ago when Austin City Council voted to get rid of the ban on public camping in most places in the city. Prop B would reinstate the ban. Camping in undesignated areas would become a criminal misdemeanor punishable by fine. Proponents of Prop B have argued that the tent cities that have grown more visible around the city are a public health and safety hazard, and that it hurts Austin's image. Anti-camping ban advocates have said the ban would only drive individuals into the woods where they are less likely to connect with services, housing.
This is an army for the future of the city. We are going to take the city back. This is not about right wing or left wing. It's about standard of living. It's about making Austin a place you can live, work, and raise a family in.
I think no matter what happens, we have to ensure that we get this community together to properly fund housing initiatives that are going to really and truly solve this issue. We know that criminalization isn't the answer.
Now, I asked the city's homeless strategy office if it has spoken with the Austin Police Department about what enforcement would look like when the ban were to take effect. A city spokesperson told us it didn't have any information on those discussions specifically, but that city staff will be working on the practical applications of the ban after the election. Now, the date this would go into effect is the date the election results are canvassed. A city spokesperson tells me that is expected May 11th, 10 days from now.
Good day, Austin, Texas, the live music capital of the world. Let's praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. We have finally evicted the homeless from the city of Austin. That's right. The people have spoken. We've had our election on May 1st, and the people of Austin have said, hey, you know what? Homeless, you got to go. You got to stop sitting and lying around. You need to be a productive member of society. So that's right. And also today, I want to talk about Texas constitutional carry. I want to give you a little history behind the Texas handgun law, because a lot of people don't know that. That's a very, very popular question that we get in our License to Carry handgun course. How do we get to where we are today? You know, what's the history behind it? You know, what? And we're going to have the father of the Texas handgun law, Jerry Patterson, on the phone to tell us about that. You know, also, we're going to talk about that Prop B. It has passed, and the homeless camping ban will be reinstated. And we'll see what happens and how the Austin Police Department and the City Hall, our Mayor Adler, handles this situation, because all he was doing last night on Twitter was crying and crying and crying. So
it was
sad.
A lapse in judgment.
So sad. Too bad. You got to go. All right. So, but you know what? I want to bring to this conversation Jerry Patterson. He's the former Texas Land Commissioner. And I want Jerry to tell us about, you know, what's the history behind Texas handgun law? How do we get to where we are today in 2021? Because now we're talking about constitutional carry. We're talking about permitless carry. And we're going to talk about, you know, what his thoughts are on constitutional or permitless carry bill. Jerry, welcome to Come and Talk It, sir.
Good to be here, Michael.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. So tell me, Jerry, you know, give us a little history. You know, how do we get to where we are today?
Well, it's pretty interesting. I was a freshman senator, brand new senator, was not housebroken, and the Texas House had a House Bill 1776, which was a concealed handgun law, and it passed the House, and Governor Richards said she was going to veto it. No matter what, she was going to veto it. And so Lieutenant Governor Bullock had a caucus of the entire Senate, and told us that, she's going to veto it. I'm not going to waste our time passing it. And I spoke up and I said, well, Governor, I'd like to pass it. I'd like to carry it over here in the Senate and pass it. He said, well, I respect your opinion, but we're not wasting the time. Well, at that time I was retired Marine, and I was staying at Camp Mabry, and I had one of those big ass cell phones, the kind you had to pull the antenna up. About 3:00 in the morning, I got a call from Bullock, and Bullock said, Patterson, I'm recognizing you on that gun bill, and we're going to shove it up her. You fill in the blank there. You know what I mean?
All right, good. All right, good, because we're on live radio.
Yeah, so the next day he recognized me on the bill, and we passed it. But what we passed was only a referendum on whether we should have a concealed handgun law. We said, well, maybe if we just make it a referendum, she'll sign it. And she vetoed it anyway.
Wow.
And as a result of Richard's veto in 1993, in the 94 election, it was a big issue. She lost some of her base, Democrat base in East Texas, particularly George W. Bush won. He had said that if it passes, I'll sign it. It did pass in 95, and he signed it. And that's all because of Bob Bullock getting mad at Ann Richards, waking me up at 3 a.m. and said, we're going to stick it where the sun don't shine. So that's how it passed. And of course, that was 1995. There were provisions in the bill that I did not like, that I had to put in there to get the votes I needed. And then come 1997, I passed a cleanup bill, which took many of those things out, including some prohibited locations such as churches. Churches were prohibited in 1995, and in 1997 we took that out, but we did it in a very deceitful manner. If you read what I passed, you would know that's what we did. And of course, come along, I think 2019, the legislature passed a bill to eliminate the prohibition on carry in churches, but it was already eliminated, and nothing changed. But that's an interesting story. So in the history of it, you go back to prior to the war between the states, you go back prior to the end of Reconstruction, post-Reconstruction. The interesting thing during that time in the late 1800s was concealed carry was considered something that criminals did. An honest man carried openly. And of course, then along came the legislature however many years ago, a couple sessions ago, and passed open carry for license holders. And now the big discussion is constitutional or permitless carry. It's said that up to 20 states already have some form of that, which raises a question in my mind when they say some form of permitless carry, because any state that has no prohibition on carrying without a license that does not also have a law that prohibits cities from regulating firearms does not have open carry, does not have constitutional carry.
All right, we're talking with Jerry Patterson. He's the father of the handgun license law. We're talking about constitutional and permitless carry, and talking about how it all started. How do we going back to Reconstruction? We're bringing you back to the present. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
This is Brittany Glaze, and I get my global gun news from Michael Cargill on Come and Talk It.
I'm a U.S. Army veteran with a strong sense of duty and respect for our system of government. After 12 years, I was honorably discharged and decided I would fulfill the American dream of entrepreneurship and open up a gun shop in Austin, Texas. At my shop, I teach people to be law-abiding and how to safely use their firearm. On page 46, we're going to talk about Penal Code Section 46.02. The day that ban went into effect, I went into my local ATF in Austin and turned over my bump stock because I'm a law-abiding citizen. But I wasn't going down without a legal fight. So that's why I reached out to NCLA.
NCLA is representing Michael Cargill because federal agencies do not have the power to rewrite statutes. Bump stocks are not machine guns. If Congress wants to change the law and ban bump stocks, it certainly can do so. But we can't have the executive branch rewriting a statute and putting people in jail for up to 10 years.
It's a problem because, this government agency has said, you know what, something that is legal is now illegal, and we're going to confiscate it from you, and we're not going to compensate you for it, and you're going to become a criminal.
The goal of our case here is to tell the ATF that they can't get away with this kind of administrative lawmaking. This isn't constitutionally permissible, and this goes against everything that our nation was founded on.
The bump stock ban turned innocent law-abiding citizens into criminals overnight, even though they were compliant with the statute. And that's not right.
This case is not about where you stand on bump stocks. It's about the rule of law. It's about whether an agency can rewrite a statute and turn a law-abiding citizen into a criminal. If the ATF can ban bump stocks, any agency can ban anything.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
That's right. So that camping ban is going to be reinstated. Mayor Adler's, he's all upset on Twitter over there, but he's going to be all right. Also, Greg Kassar, that council member over there, he's going to be just fine. We need to hold people accountable for their own actions. Oh, good thing. I love it when people go to the polls and go vote. All right, so we're talking about the history of the handgun law here in the state of Texas. We're talking with Jerry Patterson, former Texas land commissioner. Jerry, you tell us about, back before Reconstruction, going to the present.
Well, the present, we have this controversy, and the question is, will the constitutional carry bill pass the Senate? And I'm one that thinks that probably not in the form that it came from the House. I'm just guessing. I don't think the votes are there. I think they're probably 2 or 3 short, frankly, and that means there's 2 or 3 Republicans that are not comfortable with it. It's also
why do you say that? Because a lot of people, because I know that if we put this on the ballot, if we put constitutional carry on the ballot for the people of the state of Texas to decide, I know for a fact that the majority of Republicans would not vote for a constitutional carry.
You're correct on that. I mean, there's been a couple of polls, and of course, I don't believe in polls, but the majority of the Republican Party and a supermajority of the Democrat Party and a majority of all voters would not support permitless carry. So, I mean, that's just a fact. That doesn't mean we shouldn't pass it, because frankly, back when I was passing the concealed handgun law, the polls were favorable to it, and then Selena was shot by her manager or something like that, and the polls went completely opposite. They were no longer in support of it. So just because the polls don't support constitutional carry does not mean we should not pass it. There are, I think, substantive reasons. My personal opinion, I'm fine with constitutional open carry, but I think if you carry concealed, you need to have a permit. And frankly, if somebody doesn't want to get a permit, they just carry openly. That folks may not like that. They may disagree with me, as is their right. But what I find is those who disagree are the ones that whose knowledge of the Constitution is solely in a bumper sticker that words that shall not infringe.
Also,
what don't you understand about shall not infringe? Well, I understand everything about shall not infringe, and my understanding coming from reading the Constitution's Bill of Rights. Here's the interesting thing. The people that say shall not infringe are basically saying that any law is unconstitutional. In effect, they're saying that there shall be no law, that shall make no law. Well, here's the interesting fact about that. If you look at the Second Amendment, it says shall not infringe. But if you go up and look at the First Amendment, it says Congress shall make no law, and I'm quoting, respecting establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, et cetera, et cetera. So James Madison wrote 1 through 10, the Bill of Rights. And in the first one, he used shall make no law. So we know that was in his vocabulary. In the Second Amendment, he used shall not infringe. If shall not infringe means shall make no law, why didn't Madison use that same term in the second that he used in the first? So this shall not infringe, meaning that any law is unconstitutional, is just a bogus
How is that ambiguous,
premise.
though? It's not ambiguous. It's quite clear. Shall make no law and shall not be infringed is unambiguous. What you're saying there is completely...
Yeah, exactly.
No.
That's
What you're
exactly.
saying is inaccurate there. Shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. So I don't understand how you can crowbar that into mean that infringements are okay. All infringements are unconstitutional.
Well, infringement means essentially prohibition. And that's what we had prior to the passage of the concealed handgun law, because the Texas Constitution Bill of Rights says you have a right to keep and bear, to defend yourself or the state, but the legislature has power by law to regulate the wearing of arms. The problem was prohibition is not regulation, it's prohibition. So what the laws against carrying a handgun outside your home in Texas, the Texas law, was unconstitutional because it was a prohibition, not a regulation. So I think people have just somehow got this idea that shall not infringe means any law is unconstitutional, and I'm sorry, it's not. Now you can argue that, well, that we should have permitless carry for open and concealed, and that's a legitimate argument. I just happen to disagree.
Now, and I'm also concerned with a lot of people that are pushing, for this. Half of them can't even get a Texas handgun license, and that actually bothers me a little bit. They can't qualify to get a Texas handgun license.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've not seen any data on that. I suspect there are some. Whatever the number is, I don't know. But they,
that I do, because I've actually seen a report by Texas Department of Public Safety of people that have testified, for this bill, and it lists some information there on different people. I've actually seen this.
Well, then maybe if we passed CC with a prohibition on conceal, they could carry openly. And here's the deal. I don't mind open carry because criminals aren't going to carry openly. I mean, they're just not going to do that, because when you see somebody carrying openly, you can pretty much guarantee they're a law-abiding citizen, because if they weren't, they're not going to telegraph their intentions by openly carrying a firearm. Right. I'm fine with open carry, constitutional permitless open carry, but I'm not fine with concealed carry.
All right, and then also, Jerry, there's something in the bill that talks about gang members. We have that was in statute when you wrote this bill. Tell me a little bit about the gang member portion, why that was put in there initially. What was the debate surrounding it?
Well, the gang member portion was put in there after I wrote the 1995 CHL, and after I think it may have been included in the 2007 amendments, but that was hopefully a means to stop and arrest gang members who were driving around with cars with firearms in their car. That's what it was about.
But then it didn't eliminate that if they got the handgun license. So if a gang member gets a handgun license, then they can carry a gun. But a gang member, you can get the license.
If a gang member qualifies, then the law says he shall have a gun. I mean, but my hunch is gang members are not going to get a license because they're criminals to start with. They've got some kind of record in almost all cases. I'm speculating there. I don't really know that, but I don't think gang members. They're not going to have a license long if they're really gang members.
All right, now let me ask you this. Now, what about there's something in the constitutional carry bill that they removed gang members from one portion of the bill and they moved it down further down into the bill, and the debate on the floor, on the House floor, was then why don't you guys add? Why didn't they add white supremacist organizations? And along with that, in that same paragraph is gang members, prohibiting gang members from carrying a handgun, without a license, part of this permitless carry bill, and then adding white supremacists. Why do you think that's so? I know you weren't there.
Well, I think you would need. It's a definitional issue there. White supremacists. How about the black power? What's the group that's you don't hear much anymore? What are the violent black groups that were prominent or around in the 60s and 70s? What did they call them? I forgot.
Is that what you're talking
what
about?
was that?
Panthers? Is that what you're talking about?
I didn't hear that. What was it?
Black Panthers.
Black Panthers?
Yeah. Panthers, yeah. Groups like that. I mean, so how do you define it? You could make a definition. It would be all inclusive. It would include Antifa. It would include white supremacists, black supremacists, those who are members of an organization whose primary purpose is to create unrest or violence, You could do something that's more general. But I think that white supremacist thing was just it was a partisan deal. It was like, okay, we're just going to say gang members. That's what's in the law now. I don't think that's a substantive issue, really.
It sounds like a lot of arbitrary labels to be able to infringe
Exactly.
on
It
people's
seems absolutely
rights to
stupid.
carry a weapon. Honestly, like you can label
Well,
anyone a
it's
gang
hard
member.
to define.
Yeah, I think that.
It's hard
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's really hard to define those things. You know
Well,
what you want, you know what you're
can't-
talking about, but you can't put it in words.
But so if you can't put in white supremacist, then you shouldn't be able to put in gang member.
Yeah.
Second that.
Well, I don't know that white supremacists are
And I'm not
identified by color.
and I'm not beating up on you. I'm just
Yeah, I know.
Well, I mean,
I don't really have a
I
pro-
will,
I don't-
because I mean, your logic seems to be it's like circular logic, right? You seem to think that gang members aren't going to take the time to get LTCs, but you also think that gang members are going to abide by your law if you put some kind of clause in there about open carrying for gang members. So you seem
No,
to.
I don't think that at all.
But you did.
I think the first part. I think the first part that gang members are not going to get LTCs, but I don't know where you got the second part.
But no, but I'm saying that what makes you think they're going to abide by any law prohibiting gang
Well,
members
they're not.
from carrying?
Well, they're not.
So then what's the
they're not.
point in it?
Yeah.
I think
so.
it's
Yeah,
pointless.
you're right.
It gives the police another reason to arrest them because they're labeled as a gang member and they can't carry the gun.
Of course, I think when it was initially included in the statute, they had to be identified in a database as a gang member.
Okay.
Now, I think there was some provision that identified them. It wasn't just a supposition. Okay, I think you're a gang member, but I'm going on memory here, so I don't know.
Okay. And then, all right, then I want to, when we come back from the break, Jerry, I want to talk about the SB 513, which is a Senate committee. Well, it's a bill, Senate bill. In Section 2 of the bill, it added a Section 40.03 Penal Code. It basically says that it is an exception to the application of subsection H that the person is a local or state law enforcement officer who, as a member of a federal task force or of a joint task force consisting of local or state law enforcement officers and federal law enforcement officers, enforces or attempts to enforce a federal statute, order, rule, or regulation described by subsection B. Now, what they're talking about there is being within 1,000 feet of a school that local police officers can actually act as, as federal officers. We're going to talk about that when we come back from the break. We're talking about this constitutional carry bill. Is it for everyone? Is it for some? This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Jack Jones here, and I get my gun news from Michael Cargill on Come and Talk It.
Whether it's a typical traffic stop or you're just involved in a use of force incident, encounters with law enforcement can be scary and stressful. In the heat of the moment, you may inadvertently say something you don't mean or make an inconsistent statement. These are red flags for officers, and if they think you're lying or your story doesn't add up, they might arrest you and let the criminal justice system decide your fate. Police officers are trained to get information from you without making the interaction seem like a formal interrogation. But remember, from the moment an officer arrives on scene, everything you say and everything you do will be scrutinized in court. The prosecuting attorney will attempt to use anything and everything against you. So what do you say? You say, I invoke my right to remain silent, and then let your attorney interact with law enforcement on your behalf. One important note though, do not throw common sense out the window. For example, if the intruder's hiding somewhere in your house when the police arrive, or if you saw the perpetrator pitch his weapon into your backyard, quickly tell the police and then stop talking. You might ask, what about my rights? What if the police never read me my Miranda rights? Miranda rights is the common name for a collection of rights contained in the Miranda warnings, given to suspects when they're placed under arrest. The warning comes from a 1966 Supreme Court case, Miranda v. Arizona. In that case, the court held that statements from a custodial interrogation would not be admissible unless proper procedural safeguards were in place to protect the defendant's Fifth Amendment rights. We've all seen these warnings on TV and movies. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, and so on. So do police have to read you your rights? No. It's important to note that officers are not required to read you these rights unless you're in custody and subjected to interrogation. If the police show up to a crime scene and start asking you general questions and you voluntarily tell them everything that happened, those statements can be used against you regardless of the Miranda warnings because you're not in custody. If you're put in handcuffs but you say something incriminating on your own without being questioned, those statements can and will be used against you because you're not being interrogated. You're just starting to spout off. This is why it's imperative that you know your rights.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
All right, we're talking about constitutional carry. We're talking about the permitless carry bill. We're talking about, is this for everyone or just for some? You know, I want to lay all this stuff out so you guys understand what actually is in the bill, how it's worded, and all that stuff. I want you to understand how do we get to where we are today and the history behind, you know, our gun laws. And if you have a comment, you got something you want to say, give me a call. My call-in number is 512-643-5483. That's 512-643-5483. Once again, 512-643-LIVE. Give me a call. Now, Skip Davis says that he disagrees with Commissioner Patterson's interpretation. And Skip is a Austin attorney here in Austin there, Commissioner Patterson. He says, shall not infringe means shall not limit. The reason the First Amendment is different is to say that pass no laws that tend to make a particular religion more official looking than another religion, and like it was in Europe at the time with the Church of England, is what he says.
Well, the First Amendment shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to assemble and to petition government redress of grievances. So I disagree. It's not limited to establishing a superior religion. It applies to many things, including freedom of speech and right of the press. So I disagree with the counselor. And again, what they're saying shall not be infringed. What they're saying is the interpretation of many is that means any law is unconstitutional, which is the same thing as saying shall make no law. If he meant to say shall make no law, he would have said that. He didn't say that. He said shall not be infringed. And I do agree a little bit that infringed is a limitation on the right. It doesn't mean that every law is a limitation. In other words, this is the absurd argument, but do I have a right to have an atomic weapon? That's the argument ad absurdum. Do I have a right to have a crew-served weapon? And I don't think I do. Frankly, I can't afford one. I mean, I own 4 fully automatic weapons, and you can argue that prohibition that I have to go through the hoops that I have to go through is unconstitutional. You can argue that. But if you look at the founders, they talked about weapons and firearms, arms that were commonly held. And at that time, it was, muskets and muzzle loaders. Today, commonly held includes AR-15s. It does not include fully automatic weapons. Whether that's a cause and effect or effect and cause, I don't know. But I disagree.
Okay. And then Thomas from Texas says gang members have the mission statement to engage in criminal enterprises. And then Harold out of Florida says white supremacists have the codified mission statement to involve in criminal activity, hatred, and oppression.
Those are good definitions. I mean, I think you could define any group that possesses those characteristics and put them in there as prohibited and not have to worry about white supremacists, black supremacists, Tejano supremacists. I mean, you could make a definition that's all inclusive, based upon characteristics and activity rather than the color of their skin or whether they're 17-year-olds with a handgun driving around in a lowrider.
All right, so let's go back to the Senate Bill 513, which says that, hey, now your local law enforcement, because we're currently right now, the way the law is, there's a, you can't be within 1,000 feet of a school. We call it the school I can't think of it now. School Firearms Zone Act, what it's called. I can't think of the exact phrase. But you can't be within 1,000 feet of a school with any weapons at all. Okay, the people that are going to enforce that is going to be your federal authorities, like your FBI, your ATF, your DEA. Your federal authorities are going to enforce that, not your local police, not your city, not your county, not your state police. Well, this Senate bill here, Senate Bill 513, if it passes, in conjunction with permitless carry, what it's saying that now your local law enforcement, your state, your county, your city, since they work with the federal authorities, then they work in conjunction with the federal authorities, then they're part of the joint task force that if a police officer, county, state, or city pulls you over, you have any weapons at all within 1,000 feet of a school, then you're convicted. You can be charged with a felony. Well, the exception to the federal law is if you have your license to carry handgun from the state that you live in, or if you live within 1,000 feet, and some other exceptions.
Yeah, I'm reading it. After you mentioned it, I pulled it up and I'm reading it. I'm not reading the bill. I'm reading the bill analysis, which is the Cliff Notes, and this is probably about a 5-page Cliff Note of the bill. Well, actually, it's a 2-page Cliff Note of the bill, and I don't see where this interferes with or has any application in the bill itself to the 1,000-foot law and enforcement by state agencies. Now, in conjunction with concealed constitutional carry, it may.
So all right. So look at it like this. So let's say I pull within 1,000 feet of a school. Let's say I don't have my license to carry a handgun. All right, and this bill here goes into effect. What stops a district attorney, a DA? Well, what stops the school board, or the school police, your AISD, police department, talking to one of the district attorneys and saying, hey, let's bring charges against this person here because they're within 1,000 feet of the school. They didn't have a license, and let's go ahead and turn this over to a state attorney, and let's bring federal charges.
I think, and I'm looking at the bill and the bill analysis. I don't think that's anywhere in the bill or the bill analysis. What you must know that I don't know, and there's a lot that I don't know, is there something in the constitutional carry bill that does bring about that outcome? But it's not in SB 513 as I read it. It must be in the CC bill, and I have not read the bill analysis of the CC bill.
I think it's going to be that one of those irreparable consequences of bad legislation there. One of those, excuses to, this is going to give people interaction with law enforcement that you don't want.
Well, that could be, but I'd have to spend some time reading. And I'm retired, that my brain already hurts. You're already hurting me here.
All right. And then also, so we look at the constitutional carry bill, the way that's written right now. They basically take everything that was in 4603, that's a felony, the way I understand it. And they, take that along with 46.035, where we talk about, we talked about sporting events, and we talk about, those places there. They move it together, and they, instead of it being a felony to carry inside of the premises of a school, which is the building, a portion building, they make it a Class A misdemeanor, I believe. Is that right?
If they do, that's still serious. A Class A misdemeanor can have, I think, up to 2 years confinement. And I don't know what the fine, but it's still serious. If they degrade it from a felony to a Class A misdemeanor, it still ain't something you want on your record. But
like
so
Class A up to 1 year in jail, and then you can lose your handgun license for like 7 years, and if you're convicted of that before you get a license, you won't be able to have a license for 5 years. Yeah. So it can be very serious, but at least it's not a felony. So that, and and I can see some things on the House side, but I can see that going to the Senate side, and I don't see a lot of that stuff flying on the Senate side, because now you're talking about reducing the punishment for someone walking into a school, a preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, and carrying a gun, and changing it from a felony, bringing it down to a Class A misdemeanor.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know why they would do that. Maybe they needed. I mean, frankly, passing legislation is an imperfect process, and you do things and include things and exclude things just so you can get somebody's vote to pass the bill, based on the premise that you'll come back in 2 years and the next session and take the offensive stuff out of it.
Right.
Or in this case, you may be sweetening the pot to get somebody's vote that you need. And I had to do that in 95. Some of the prohibitions that were in the 95 bill were put in there to get somebody's vote, and then I took them out 2 years later. And
I appreciate that, because you got to tell people that, how did you do that? Because in 1997, in under 46035, we could not carry in a church. And so you were able to do something, and you were very sneaky about how you did it, and it caught everyone off guard. And frankly, a lot of people, even still today, didn't know that. And then it took people really into 2019 us explaining.
Nobody knew what I did.
Right, and they still didn't know for years, decades.
For years. And my main nemesis was sat right behind me, Senator Royce West. He's a friend of mine, but he was the number one opponent to the concealed carry law. It passed. And then in 2 years later, I want to get rid of those prohibited locations. But instead of striking the prohibited locations in 46035, I added the paragraph down below and said, those prohibited locations do not apply unless effective notice is provided in accordance with Penal Code 30-6. I created 30-6, which said that to prohibit, you must have this sign.
Right.
So in other words, I made the church, and there were two other locations, exactly like any other private premise location, in that the private premise holder had the right to ban carry, but they had to provide effective notice, and effective notice was one of three things. You could tell somebody to leave, you could put it in a church bulletin, for example, or you could post a sign. If you post a sign, it had to be 1-inch high letters in Spanish and in English, and it was a huge sign. I did that intentionally. But when I offered that up on the floor, nobody caught what I was doing. So the church prohibition was removed in 1997, along with two other locations.
Right. And so, in the way it came down, in the end, was everything that's like if you go to a hospital, if you have your license, you walk to a hospital. As of 1997, they had to give you notice. If they gave you notice, then you could not carry inside the hospital with a license. Amusement park, same thing. And then it was churches. So ever since 1997, a person with a license could actually carry a handgun inside of a church. And for years, a lot of people didn't know that.
Exactly. And the interesting thing, though, in the case of the hospitals, they are also bound by a health and safety code.
Right.
And I believe, and I'm going on memory here, the health and safety code requires them to ban firearms on their premises. So I think what the deal is that if you carry it in, I'm not providing legal advice now, and I'm going on memory. Let me caveat that. You can't get in trouble for carrying a gun at a hospital, but the hospital can get in trouble for letting you do so. And that was the way it was at one time, so that may or may not still be the case. Bottom line is, most people, including myself, I carry all the time. Everywhere I go. There are very few exceptions. If I ignore some of these prohibited locations, in part because they now have to tell me to leave to get, to be run afoul of 30-6. I don't ignore federal prohibition. I go to the VA clinic quite a bit, not quite a bit. That's where I get my health care. I leave my gun in my truck. I walk in with a holster.
Open carry?
Pardon?
Do you conceal or open carry?
99% concealed. Very seldom open.
All right, we come back from the break. I'm going to ask you one more thing there, Jerry, before we let you loose. We're talking about constitutional carry. We're talking about permitless carry. We're talking about the homeless camping ban. We're talking about the Ninth Circuit lifts their ban on 3D printing gun blueprints. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
Peace, this is Maj Toure. You're listening to Come and Talk It Radio with Michael Cargill.
Hello, my name is Edwin Walker. I'm an independent program attorney with Texas Law Shield. I want to talk to you today about an issue that we see on a daily basis. In fact, you yourself will encounter it on a daily basis, and that is the subject of road rage. I am sure that you have all seen road rage. You may have actually been involved in a road rage incident. Now, if you're a responsible gun owner, I'm going to give you a few words of advice on how to react when you find yourself in one of these unfortunate road rage incidents. While on the roadways, we all observe something that makes us upset. Whether it's poor driving, unsafe driving, or just simply somebody being very discourteous. by all means, you should restrain yourself from engaging that person and telling them how bad their actions were, because this can be perceived as an act of road rage. If you're a lawful gun owner, you have a firearm in your vehicle, you do not want to be viewed as the aggressor in a road rage situation. Now, with regard to a situation where an individual has chosen to rage against you, and you are the actual victim of the road rage, if you and the other individuals are still in their automobiles, do not use your firearm to respond to any of the rager's activities. This is because law enforcement views the fact that you're both still safely in your metal boxes as removing any threat of immediacy that you may be harmed. So please, if you have a gun, somebody is raging against you, forget you have a gun. Don't display it, don't brandish it, don't show it, don't point it, and for God's sake, don't fire it. This could result in a lot of trouble for you. Now let's look at a situation where a road rage incident has escalated. It has escalated to the point where one of the participants has actually gotten out of their vehicle. We recommend that you stay in your vehicle at all times. Do not exit your vehicle, because the person who exits their vehicle is going to be looked at as the aggressor. If the other individual has exited their vehicle and they are not in contact with your vehicle and they do not have a weapon, then do not feel that you can display your weapon in an act of self-defense. People are allowed to just simply stand there and scream at you, scream whatever they want. Until they make a demonstrative effort to try to harm you, there is no immediate threat that would justify displaying or shooting or brandishing your firearm. Now, in the event that the person shows their own weapon, in particular a firearm, the existence of their weapon would give you reasonable belief that there was an immediate threat.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
All right, so Jerry, you were telling us earlier about, other states and the fact that in Texas we have a preemptive law, meaning that your local cities and municipalities cannot come up with stricter gun laws than what we have here in Texas. And so we're talking about constitutional carry, we're talking about permitless carry. That actually changes the game across the United States. So you can't say, people are kind of criticizing Texas, but in Texas we have a preemptive law. In Texas we have a concealed carry on campus law, where you can carry your handgun inside the building of a college campus. So Texas is different compared to any other state.
Well, there are some other states that have a preemption law as well. But my point is this, when you say that 20 other states have some form, that's a really key term there, some form of constitutional or permitless carry, you need to really, ferret that out. What is that? What is some form? Are there prohibited locations? And if that state that has permitless carry already does not have a preemption law that prohibits, local municipalities or counties from, prohibiting carry, then it really doesn't have constitutional carry, because I guarantee you that every urban area prohibits that, constitutional carry. So it's not exactly as it's described that we're lagging behind. We are not in Texas.
And then what concerns me about this is how is law enforcement, how's law enforcement going to perceive, seeing everyone walking down the street? And that's one thing I'm concerned about, because it takes some time to condition and to train people to be, to be comfortable with this. And that's what concerns me.
Well, I mean, it's a little concerning, but frankly, we have open carry now, and they've accommodated it well generally, because there are just not that many people doing it, and I think the number of people doing it will continue to go down as the novelty wears off.
Okay.
And also, as I said earlier, a criminal is not going to carry openly. It telegraphs. It's like their whole point is to be, secret, and to sneak around and use that gun when it's not obvious that they have one. So I'm not worried as much about that as I am about people who now would be able to carry concealed without a license and who may have some nefarious intent, because that's what they'll do. And they'll do that now. I understand that. But that's where I am. People don't like it, I'm sure. But I'm just being straight.
Now, the lieutenant governor has signaled this week that, and he mentioned this in an interview, that there's a possibility they could, provide an amendment to this when this bill goes to the Senate on the Senate floor and actually reduce the price of the actual license to make it free. You still have to get your license in order to carry, but it would be a free license. What do you think about
it's
that?
getting freer every day. I mean, when we passed the bill in '95, it was $140 for 4 years. Then we expanded that to 5 years. And now the price, what is the price to get a license now? $40 or something?
$40.
Yeah, so it went from 140 for 4 years to 40 for 5. So it's not free, but it's moving in the right direction.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, free would be better. Free would be better than $40, but I mean, I agree. It's like getting cheaper.
What about those people out there? I don't know if anyone said anything on Facebook that we don't want the government's permission in order to do this.
Well, I understand that, and that's the same crowd that says "shall not infringe" means "shall make no law," including a law to get permission. And I disagree with them. And you can openly you can carry a long gun, no permit, nothing, no authorization required. It's kind of cumbersome. And you can carry openly with a license. And frankly, as I said, and as I suggested, you can carry openly without a license as far as I'm concerned. But my problem is carrying concealed.
Yeah, we went down to Congress a few years back and openly carried. And whenever people see someone with an AR-15 in public, they just freak out massively.
Yeah. And, it's... Which has been ironic. You've been able to walk down Congress with a AR-15 at port arms with a 30-round mag forever, but now it's the weapon of du jour. It's the focus on that weapon and that weapon alone. Frankly, I'm getting tired of ARs. I've got an M1 carbine. Matter of fact, I have an M2 carbine. I just like the tradition of the M1. I like the wood. It smells good.
That's a great gun. But yeah, it seems like nowadays, whatever happened in the past to make it so, but nowadays you have to carry concealed or else you will just cause a stir and cause a scene.
How many civilians would even recognize an AR-15?
Well, it's a scary weapon.
Well, they don't know the difference. They think it's a machine gun.
Well, I mean, I've been carrying open for like the past, not fully, but probably about 50% of the time for the past 2 weeks. And I haven't noticed anything like crazy. Like I haven't had anything like.
But you don't carry a long gun.
No, not long gun. No, I'm saying I'm carrying a handgun openly, carrying a handgun, and I haven't had any really weird. I've noticed.
That's because they're afraid of you. Because don't let the voice fool you. He's a black guy.
I'm an African American.
He's black with braids, and when they see a black guy, tall guy with braids, they're just afraid to say anything. They just don't want to look. Don't let the accent fool you.
Maybe, but I think at the same time, it's like I'll be honest. Like when I went in Texas, I remember the first time I saw someone carrying a firearm when I first came to Texas, and it kind of freaked me out. But then I was like, okay, if that freaked me out, I should carry a firearm myself. Do you know what I mean? So I think if it concerns anybody, you should carry a firearm, and that's the beauty of living in Texas. Do you know what I mean? That you can, carry a firearm and go about your business.
After you get permission from the government.
Which obviously I disagree.
And pay $40.
I expected someone to throw that in there. And Jerry, can you give us a little bit, go back, a little further in that history and tell us, what was the first gun control law that you can think of that happened in Texas? Ever?
Well, it was after the Civil War. There were two groups of people that were considered, dangerous with firearms, and they were recently freed freed slaves and former Confederate, particularly former Confederate officers. So the prohibition began because those two groups of people were not deemed trustworthy enough to possess a handgun.
So you're telling me that the roots of the concealed carry laws are to do with, as you said,
gun laws, period.
Gun laws, period, are kind of rooted in racism. Yeah.
So I don't
That's
understand. A really good point.
So why don't we just eradicate them? Why are you patting yourself on the back for the fact that you've allowed us to have concealed carry and whatnot when we should just eradicate those laws? You kind of almost touched on it yourself there. You almost said you acknowledge that the source of gun control laws in Texas are to do with racism and say the oppression of blacks. Yet, why do we still persist in having them? Why don't we just eradicate them all? Why are you happy with just reforming them?
I think that would have been exactly the noble thing to do in 1866.
So why didn't you do that during your career when you had power?
We're no longer worried about black people carrying firearms as a matter of policy.
Well, maybe not, because we did just have a little conversation there about blacks and Latinos having firearms. So I don't necessarily think you can say that.
Well, no, there is no movement to disarm black people. There is no concern about black people per se having a firearm today. There was in 1866.
So what Jerry's saying is, back when he was in office, you had a governor that said this is never going to pass, not the concealed carry law at all, and so that governor lost her seat, and so when that next section rolled around, he brought the bill again, and then the governor that actually beat her, which was the whole thing, was the concealed carry law. That governor, which is George Bush, signed it into law, and it was like baby steps. You could only get so much out of the people that were in office. You couldn't get everything you wanted. Every session you only get so much. We'll give you this, but we're not going to give you anything past that point.
Yeah.
And if you want anything past this point, then you're not going to get nothing. You take what we give you.
The reform.
Right,
it's like baby steps.
But in that little analogy you gave me there, that you will take what you give you is almost you're saying you'll give us our freedom, right? What the government is clearly doing here is an infringement. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's not what we give you, as in this government. What the government gives you, it's what you can get, because there are 31 senators, 150 House members, and they don't always agree with you. So it's not anybody giving you anything; it's what you can get.
Well, yeah, but I would say no, because the law in and of itself is limitations on what I can do, right? So it is kind of them giving me my freedom, right? Like if we just eradicated the government right now, we'd have freedom. We could essentially do what we want. But we do have a government, and they're the ones who are restricting us.
As if it's monolithic. It's not monolithic. It's votes. It's 181 people, many of them who vote.
No, I don't think so. I think that's what you're talking about is garbage. That's not true whatsoever. We get a handful of opportunities every year to vote, and that's our one occasion where we can actually have some control on the electoral process.
Yeah,
and then we have to let our control go to people like yourself who are going to pass whatever laws they feel is best for us and Americans. I think that's kind of a bit of an antiquated system.
Yeah, and I agree. And the thing is that I hear people say, well, if they don't vote for constitutional carry, we're going to lose the next election. No, they're not, because the majority of voters are not comfortable with it. Right. So when you make these threats that I'm going to kick this guy out of office because he doesn't vote for constitutional carry, it's a threat without anything behind it, because the majority of voters are not comfortable with it. Right. That doesn't mean we shouldn't pass it. That alone does not mean we shouldn't pass it. I'm just saying that, at the end of the day, there are people out there that vote, and votes count.
Yeah, I don't think the lieutenant governor is going to lose his seat over this. I think it may be an issue. It may be, you're going to have a group of people that are going to make a lot of noise, but his base, the majority of his base, they support this. They support the handgun license program, is what I think.
I think you're right. I think it's a false premise to think that somebody's going to get beat because they vote against constitutional carry.
Mm-hmm. All right, awesome, man. All right, thank you, Jerry Patterson. I sure appreciate you, sir.
All right, talk to y'all later.
Yes, sir, absolutely. You have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, sir.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, this is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
Peace, this is Maj Toure. You're listening to Come and Talk It Radio with Michael Cargill.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a U.S. Army veteran with a strong sense of duty and respect for our system of government. After 12 years, I was honorably discharged and decided I would fulfill the American dream of entrepreneurship and open up a gun shop in Austin, Texas. At my shop, I teach people to be law-abiding and how to safely use their firearm. On page 46, going to talk about Penal Code Section 46.02. The day that ban went into effect, I went into my local ATF in Austin and turned over my bump stock because I'm a law-abiding citizen. But I wasn't going down without a legal fight. So that's why I reached out to NCLA.
NCLA is representing Michael Cargill because federal agencies do not have the power to rewrite statutes. Bump stocks are not machine guns. If Congress wants to change the law and ban bump stocks, it certainly can do so. But we can't have the executive branch rewriting a statute and putting people in jail for up to 10 years.
It's a problem because, this government agency has said, you know what, something that is legal is now illegal, and we're going to confiscate it from you, and we're not going to compensate you for it, and you're going to become a criminal.
The goal of our case here is to tell the ATF that they can't get away with this kind of administrative lawmaking. This isn't constitutionally permissible, and this goes against everything that our nation was founded on.
The bump stock ban turned innocent law-abiding citizens into criminals overnight, even though they were complying with the statute. And that's not right.
This case is not about where you stand on bump stocks. It's about the rule of law. It's about whether an agency can rewrite a statute and turn a law-abiding citizen into a criminal. If the ATF can ban bump stocks, any agency can ban anything.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
All right, so during the break, we were talking, amongst ourselves here, and we're talking about, a little bit of what Jerry was talking about, that during that time frame when we got the handgun license law back in 1995, in order for that to happen, that previous year, we had to pretty much unseat a governor. And that is when the state of Texas pretty much swapped and flipped from Democrat to Republican in order to get a handgun license law. And then it started changing from there. And that's how the Republicans, slowly but surely took over and became the majority. That's basically what had to happen.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it did. Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
So it wasn't, because you're saying it as if it was something easy. You're saying, all you had to do was just say, we're going to do everything. Well, you can't they didn't even want to give you that, let alone everything.
But I agree with you. I don't understand why this is so difficult. I get that. But for me, I don't agree with any infringement of the law possible, right? Period.
I understand that.
So for me,
but then they're saying, okay, well, guess what? Then you get nothing.
No, don't.
Now what?
I've got an AR-15.
That's what they're gonna tell you.
Yeah, I don't think permitless carry has a big enough base of people who want it to pass that you could even do the same thing again. No,
but it's not a case of do you want to pass. It's a case of do I have a right to carry a firearm wherever I damn well please, provided I don't infringe on anyone else's rights. And that answer is yes. There's no question of your right. I have a right to carry a firearm wherever I damn well please, right? Okay? And that can be concealed, that can be open. You or the elected officials in Congress do not have the authority or to dictate whether I can or cannot carry that weapon, right? So for me, the debate is not about whether we're allowed to conceal carry or not, any of that stuff.
Read all of the Second Amendment.
What do you mean?
Read it all.
But you know I read it. You know I know it, like,
read
backwards.
it all. Read it all.
What do you want me to do? What?
I want to read the entire thing. I want you to get down to not just
it's
not
it's,
just the
but
beginning.
I don't like
read the
because this
read it
is
all.
what I'm saying. This is why you're stuck in the matrix.
Right.
I don't care what the Constitution says. Okay?
Oh,
The Constitution has absolutely no bearing on my rights or freedom.
Either you have something, you have a boundary, something that you're going to go by. You have nothing you're going to go by.
No, absolutely not.
So,
no, again.
So
look,
then there's chaos.
No, no, there isn't chaos, right?
Yeah,
it's not
complete
chaos.
You either you have some rules or you don't.
Absolutely not.
Then there's some chaos.
No, this is stupid. It's like why does this piece of paper? Why must I submit to this piece of paper which I didn't sign?
I didn't say you have to have a piece of paper.
What's that?
Because it's enforced.
Precisely because
that's really all. When you talk about like authority, the only thing stopping you from doing this is just the enforcement of the rules.
Right.
Just like how the camping ban, if they don't, if it could be banned, but if the police don't enforce it, tents are still going to be there.
Again, I don't.
I mean, they
fully
couldn't
understand
enforce
your point.
it, but yeah. Well, I was just saying
it's the same thing.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
the
it's the same thing. Like,
same thing. Then
like,
we allow people to. Well,
as long
if
as
we
they're
don't
not
have any
enforcing it.
rules, no rules, then we allow people to sit and lie and camp everywhere.
No,
Same thing with the camping ban.
But the thing with camping ban is that's because you've fallen for the fallacy of public property. I don't agree with there being public property. Right, and this is why camping ban is a controversial issue.
It's not even just about public property. It's also about it's all about parking lots. It's all about businesses and a lot of people they're having issues on their property. That's
some
people don't even care about other people's property.
That's BS.
I got some videos for you.
I don't care.
I got videos.
Okay, well I'm calling them lies right now.
Of course you don't.
If you go on anyone's property,
if you
go on anyone's property in Texas, you're gonna get shot. Okay, we all know that's a fact, right?
So nobody, not true.
No, it's 100% true.
Can you shoot someone for criminal trespass?
I will.
No, you cannot. You're gonna go to jail.
I don't care.
You're going to go to jail. But you cannot shoot someone for criminal trespass.
After you ask them to leave, then you can.
You cannot. You can only use force. You cannot use deadly force.
Okay. Well, don't stand on my property then.
Well, you can't. I'm just telling you.
I just call him BS on it. Like, you can't. No one is going onto other people's property. Because you just phone the police and say, "Hey, remove these people." Right.
Inside the building, that's one thing. Outside, you cannot. Unfortunately,
so
whether you like it or not.
So if I set up a tent on your lawn, what you're going to do? Are you going to wait for Prop B to be enforced, or are you going to call 911? What are you going to do?
Let's say you have a swimming pool. You have a swimming pool.
I've just given you the
Let's
example.
say you have a swimming pool.
Right, I have a swimming pool.
It's right now. It's 5 o'clock. It's 5:07.
Right.
The sun's up. I can go swim a couple laps of your swimming pool, and there's not a whole bunch you can do about it, and you can't shoot me.
Try.
If you do, you're going to jail for the rest of your life.
I'm not going nowhere.
And my family will sue you.
I don't care.
I'm just telling you.
This is the problem with Americans. Is like you've been so
no. The problem
dumbed
is
down
people like you don't know what the law is, and you need to understand what the law is. That's the problem.
I reject the law because I'm not. Why am I being bound to someone else's dictates? Explain to me the
enforcement.
duty.
If you don't know what the law is, then you're going to go to jail.
No. Again, I acknowledge that. I understand that, but I'm asking you to explain to me under
Don't
what
drop the soap.
authority do I have to why do these people have authority over me, and why am I subject to their dictates? Okay, what explain that to me. Answer that.
Unfortunately, that is the law. And that's what we have. Unless you go to the Capitol
slave
and change
mentality. What you're saying?
It's
You're
because
saying,
they have
you're
the
saying,
guns.
One second.
Yeah.
But exactly. You're saying these people are the masters, therefore we must submit to them, and that is slave mentality, and that is frankly un-American.
Until you do something and change it. Then do something and change the law.
That's exactly what I'm doing now. I'm not.
What have you done? What have you
voting.
changed? Give me something you're changing.
I'm not
By
voting.
not voting, you're
Yes.
not changing anything.
No. I'm not voting, and I'm asking other people not to vote too. And this is peaceful protest. This is peaceful revolution.
And
I don't
nothing
need
will
to get a gun.
change.
No, absolutely not. I don't
You
need to
don't
get a
vote.
gun.
You sit there and you don't vote. Nothing will happen. I
No,
guarantee
I
you.
agree with Anthony.
I
Not
promise
voting,
you.
it will change.
Absolutely
things.
not voting and not engaging with the government is how we'll go about change.
People already don't engage with the government.
Yeah,
and they
majority of
don't
people
vote.
don't vote now.
Yeah.
No, we need.
What is it, like a third of the population?
Don't vote.
That's not enough.
How's that working out for you?
That's
Yeah,
not
only
enough.
about a third vote. Yeah.
And how's that
In
working
the
out?
major elections. There are over 1 million people in Austin, and how many people voted in this special election? Like 100,000.
Not even.
It was
Slightly
more,
below.
It was more than 100,000.
It's like 90. It's like 90,000.
No.
Yeah,
I read
yeah.
the vote.
160,000.
160,
Okay,
yeah.
160,000.
16%
We have
of the
over
population.
1 million.
Yeah, that's 60%.
How's that not voting for you?
Yeah,
Like I
granted,
said, it's like
18 and
you
under
can,
can't vote.
you can say that and be smug and take that kind of approach, right? No, but like I see what you're trying to do, trying to antagonize me. But like I say, is
1.2 million.
Right, because like what am I meant to do? I'm not going to
less
engage in
than
violence.
50.
I don't believe in initiatory violence.
I know.
Therefore, I'm not going to go and shoot up a building. Right, my revolution is by not engaging with the government and not voting, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to engage in initiatory violence because I don't
It's a
need
very
to.
quiet revolution then.
No, but it's brilliant because
Unless they get in
this
his
is the
pool.
thing. Like I've said before, and I want it said here on the show, and I want it recorded. I know exactly the day when you will convert to my ideology. Right?
When would I convert?
And it is the day when they introduce legislation against cryptocurrency. We all know that there's going to have to be some very sweeping, very, very stringent legislation against cryptocurrency. You know it, I know it, everyone else's room knows it, right?
No, they don't need to make legislation. They just get private companies to not accept it, and
Yeah, precisely, through
but
through
they can track all the
legislation.
blockchain.
Yeah,
No,
through-
that doesn't have to be through
And so you
legislation.
can't deposit
do you
money
mean?
and transfer money into a bank account.
Yeah,
so on
that's
and so forth.
right. That's what they're
No, the
that-
banks
that-
could just do it
Kinda
as
what-
financial institutions without laws being
They
passed.
absolutely can.
Kinda
But
what
there's
they're doing
nothing
to
stopping
gun
me
companies.
One second. There's
Yeah.
nothing stopping me starting a crypto exchange saying, "Oh, give me $5 in cash, and I'll give you the equivalent in Bitcoin," right? But the government will legislate against that, and that's what I'm talking about. Okay, and that's what will happen. The government is most likely to ban the exchange of fiat currency without either a license or whatever. Okay, that's the most likely legislation. When that legislation comes into place, this man here will agree with me wholeheartedly on everything that I'm saying, because you understand the principles of cryptocurrency and the decentralized aspect of it. And when the government comes in and legislates against it, it will prove to you that everything that I'm saying is right, that the government does not have our best interests at heart, and they are not interested in our well-being.
Yeah. And we're two different people. And you know what? I'm the house Negro, you're the field Negro.
No, you're not. No, it's the exact opposite. Exact opposite. You're the one. The thing.
Nah.
You do the big talk. You do the big man talk on the radio, and you talk about you talk about people's rights and stuff like that. But you yourself are submitting to the ATF on a daily basis. So don't go doing all this shit like you're
don't say the
pardon
S
me.
word.
You're some free and enlightened individual when you're submitting and sucking the
Producer's freaking
of the
out.
ATF on a daily basis.
Well, he's got to pay a lot of taxes,
Yeah,
man.
Precisely. Yeah. You're paying a cut. I know how hard it is to operate a business.
Tell me this. Riddle me this, Batman.
Go on.
What would I do? What worth would I be of you if I'm in jail?
What do you mean? You shouldn't go to jail.
Exactly.
No, you shouldn't go to jail.
So
You
if
should
I
fight, you
don't
should die.
follow those rules,
No, because I don't believe
I
in
work
jail.
within the system.
Yeah, right, you should marshal yourself.
And then what worth would I be if I'm dead?
Because this is how we get political change. No, let me explain, right?
You will die and no one will remember you.
Let me explain.
This I
Okay?
promise.
The government enforces its will on us through the use of violence. If you choose to object to the government's will, they will bring about violence or send you to prison. Okay. Therefore, if you want to bring about political change, you must be open and willing to accept violence. Okay. Now, I'm never going to commit initiatory violence to someone else. But if the government feels the need that they wish to use violence against me, even if I'm not transgressing the rights of others, then violence will occur. I'm not the one who's initiating said violence.
You know what? When we bring about change, there's a lot of ways to bring about change. Okay. Anytime someone brings about change and try to do it the way you're doing it, it doesn't come out
through
the way
peace.
that you're expecting it to happen.
My
Because he's introducing
philosophy
chaos
is
and
that
all
I don't want to transgress anyone's rights, and I expect the same to respect to be given to me. My philosophy is thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill. That's basically my political views.
Sure.
Now, if you can't accept that, and if that's too much for you, then you're clearly the problem here.
But Anthony, what you're saying, your mentality is reactionary, right?
Absolutely not. No. My
No,
reality is,
if you
how do
will
you
not
mean?
do
You just
something to
elaborate.
someone else, but if the government comes to you, then you will react.
No, if
right?
only if they initiate violence against me,
Then you will react
Then
with
that would
violence, right?
justify violence in response, if that makes sense, right? So like, I would never go and commit violence to anyone just like walking down the street. That would violate non-aggression, right? However, if you pull out a gun to me, it makes no difference whether you're wearing a police officer's uniform or the clothes you're wearing right now. You have no right to exert your will on me. Does that
But
make
with
sense
the
to you?
government, what you're saying, you're not going to initiate violence, but if they do, then you will react with violence, right?
I don't think
And
that's
I
so-
think that,
reactionary is the proper
I think that
term.
I'm not saying that's what I will and will not do for the sake of legal reasons, but I will say that will be an ethical decision. That would be what you're describing. I would consider that ethical.
But
Yes.
what if you're just playing into their hand? What if they are initiating the violence to get you?
No,
to
that again,
react?
Google Waco, right? That's how the government operates.
Yeah, because
and
see, Anthony's busy playing checkers when everyone else is playing chess. You can't play checkers; you got to play chess. This is Michael Cargill, and you are listening to Come and Talk It.
This is Brittany Glaze, and I get my global gun news from Michael Cargill on Come and Talk It.
Hello, my name is Edwin Walker. I'm an independent program attorney with Texas Law Shield. I want to talk to you today about an issue that we see on a daily basis. In fact, you yourself will encounter it on a daily basis, and that is the subject of road rage. I am sure that you have all seen road rage. You may have actually been involved in a road rage incident. Now, if you're a responsible gun owner, I'm going to give you a few words of advice on how to react when you find yourself in one of these unfortunate road rage incidents. While on the roadways, we all observe something that makes us upset. Whether it's poor driving, unsafe driving, or just simply somebody being very discourteous. By all means, you should restrain yourself from engaging that person and telling them how bad their actions were, because this can be perceived as an act of road rage. If you're a lawful gun owner, you have a firearm in your vehicle, you do not want to be viewed as the aggressor in a road rage situation. Now, with regard to a situation where an individual has chosen to rage against you, and you are the actual victim of the road rage, if you and the other individuals are still in their automobiles, do not use your firearm to respond to any of the rager's activities. This is because law enforcement views the fact that you're both still safely in your metal boxes as removing any threat of immediacy that you may be harmed. So please, if you have a gun, somebody is raging against you, forget you have a gun. Don't display it, don't brandish it, don't show it, don't point it, and for God's sake, don't fire it. This could result in a lot of trouble for you. Now let's look at a situation where a road rage incident has escalated. It has escalated to the point where one of the participants has actually gotten out of their vehicle. We recommend that you stay in your vehicle at all times. Do not exit your vehicle, because the person who exits their vehicle is going to be looked at as the aggressor. If the other individual has exited their vehicle and they are not in contact with your vehicle and they do not have a weapon, then do not feel that you can display your weapon in an act of self-defense. People are allowed to just simply stand there and scream at you, scream whatever they want. Until they make a demonstrative effort to try to harm you, there is no immediate threat that would justify displaying or shooting or brandishing your firearm. Now, in the event that the person shows their own weapon, in particular a firearm, the existence of their weapon would give you reasonable belief that there was an immediate threat of harm that would justify an act of force or deadly.
Welcome back to Come and Talk It. And now here's Michael Cargill.
All right, so Americans under 30 have rapidly turned against gun control laws, according to a poll by the Washington Post that was released on Tuesday. So from among the more than 1,000 U.S. adults found that Americans overall are less supportive of new gun control legislation than they were just 3 years ago. And that's probably because a lot of these people have actually purchased firearms in the year 2020. Now, people between the ages of 18 and 29 saw the sharpest decline in backing for new weapons laws, with fewer than half now saying new legislation is needed to reduce the risk of future mass shootings or to block red flag laws. So in April 2018, the last time the ABC Washington Post survey was conducted on this issue, 65% of these young Americans said they support gun control laws. That percentage is now 45%. What do you think?
I'm not surprised.
No? Why are you not surprised? Go that way.
Oh, well, I'm just not surprised. I don't have too much into it other than that, but I don't know. I feel like people are kind of waking up and they want guns, man, and people want to be able to protect themselves. People are walking into schools, shooting up like banks, a lot of no, I said banks, but like a lot of things, and people want to be able to defend themselves, and people are realizing that police are not going to defend them.
Well, you know, Joe Biden in his April 16th speech, he said, the folks who own weapons, the folks who own guns, they support universal background checks. The majority of them think we should not be selling assault weapons.
Who writes this man's speeches?
That's a quote.
Well, it's funny you say that because in California has already tried President Biden's ghost gun ban, and it didn't work. So in President Joe Biden's address to Congress last week, he repeated his intention to, in a manner still unspecified, ban so-called ghost guns and made from, basically kits that have no serial numbers on which you can buy without the background check requiring in buying and assembling guns from licensed dealers. So basically, you can buy yourself a a 3D printing machine or a ghost gun machine or a CNC machine. You buy yourself a CNC machine and you can actually finish out an 80% lower receiver and turn to 100% lower receiver. But when they're talking about ghost guns, I think they're really talking about what? They're talking about someone who is filing the serial numbers off
Yeah,
of
that's
the
what
gun.
Cody had brought up
And they're
last
trying to
time
trick
he was
everyone.
here, that the majority of these guns that are unserialized are not polymer 80s or homemade guns. They are store-bought guns or bought from somewhere and then had the serial numbers filed off.
And people have been doing that for decades. I mean, that's been like the case forever. You buy a stolen gun, you shave the serial number off, which has always been a felony, and you're using that gun. So they're using this term ghost gun. They're taking that term ghost gun and referring it to that.
I don't think that's entirely true because in California right now, there's a massive like industry of like gang members sent to other gang members of like polymer 80s and stuff like that. There's a really good subreddit that I look at called Cali Banging, and that's where like hella stuff is posted on there where they're actually using 3D printers, and they're not deserializing weapons. In fact, a lot of time they want serialized weapons. Because if you're going to commit a homicide with a serialized weapon, you go to like another part of the city, buy a serialized weapon from there, use it, and then it's not going to be connected to your gang in your part of the city.
I know whenever they show the pictures of them, it's usually some kind of really funky little homemade gun with, you know, whatever it else is on it. And I've never in any report, any pictures from any police department ever seen a polymer 80.
Me
ever.
neither.
Well, apparently, like the I think it's like the link will be on that subreddit. But something like in California right now, it's something like 30% of the weapons that they're taking off the street are 3D printed and home manufactured weapons.
Really?
Yeah, it's that much because it's these gang members. Because again, gang members have discovered, hey, a couple of YouTube tutorials and a 3D printer, and I can make an infinite supply of guns, right?
Yeah.
So, and as well, you have to understand that the most common homicide caliber is 2.2, perfect for 3D printing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to do that kind of thing, if you're planning to commit homicide, the best weapon in the world would be a 3D printed gun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Just throw it in the oven when you're done. It's just a piece of plastic.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean, right? So
not really, because you can just a person steals a gun and just toss it. They've been doing it. Gang members have been doing that, ever since like the 1700s.
A one and done popper.
Yeah, and just throw it in the lake.
Well, I'm not saying what I do. I'm just saying what I read in like different gang subreddits and the Lone Star Ghetto and Cali Banging. They're printing guns.
All right, the Supreme Court is going to hear a case on carrying guns in public. And so basically the Supreme Court said on last Monday that it will review a longstanding New York law that imposes strict limits on carrying guns outside the home, setting the stage for its first major Second Amendment decision in more than a decade, and the first to be decided by the court's newly expanded conservative majority. Now, this move came after a recent spat of mass shootings, which were followed by calls from President Biden and other Democrats for stricter restrictions on firearms. And scholars who study gun rights said a ruling striking down the New York law could undermine those efforts and have a broad national implications. Now, the ruling will profoundly impact the number of guns legally carried on the streets of New York, Los Angeles, and Boston, said Adam Winkler, a law professor at the University of California, Los Angeles, and the author of Gunfight, The Battle Over the Right to Bear Arms in America. He says, in these cities, only a handful of residents have permits to carry firearms. And so basically the Supreme Court has turned down countless Second Amendment appeals since it's established as an individual right to keep guns in the home for self-defense in 2008, which was the District of Columbia versus the Heller case. So this is going to be the first case in a very long time, and we'll see what happens.
What's his point? What he's saying about the permit carriers in New York?
Basically,
like, you have a murder a day in New York.
In New York City, only certain people can get a license.
But you still have a rampant violence problem there.
Right. So only certain people can get one. You have to be like a politician.
Yeah, even celebrities have trouble getting them,
correct.
Stuff like that, right?
Yeah. So that's the issue.
But like that doesn't. But my point is, doesn't that go to prove that like as far as to curb crime, permits aren't effective? Because like in like East New York, there's a murder a day still. Like that still happens.
Actually, when you look at the statistics, when you come to violent crimes, ever since the handgun license law, when more people get their license, crime has actually been decreased. When you look over the years, you look at a 20-year span.
Or is that more
the only
people have
factor
guns?
playing in, or?
Well, sorry?
Or is that because more people have guns, not because they're permitted to have the guns, but because then more people have guns?
The observation I was making, I was saying that there clearly isn't a strong correlation between permits and the reduction of crime, because it might have decreased over time, but there still is a huge amount of violence in New York, despite the fact they have quite stringent gun laws. That's the point I was making, and I think that's pretty objectively correct. I don't think
Yeah, the cities with the highest amounts of
there's
gun
like-
control on the books have
yeah,
by
Chicago,
far the
Philly,
most violence.
LA. You know what I mean? So they have huge amounts of like restrictions. They still have a huge amount of violence too, which is why I'm so.
Yeah, Anthony, you said something to me the other day about in London how people there there's a lot of stabbings, but you also said a lot of people carry guns as well, and they're getting
No,
them
no,
illegally.
not carry guns. Like the way firearms tend to work in London is they're used almost exclusively for homicides because that's all that that's what they're effective for, right? So what happens in London is like you'll typically get them. They will leave the firearms in the house of like a child, typically, or like a younger gang member, like kind of 14 to 16, because they're not going to get raided. So they'll typically hold the guns, and they're the ones who will keep possession of it. And then when it's ready to be used, then they'll give it to a older, and then they'll go do whatever they need to do. And they'll get returned. So like weapons aren't used like in the same way perhaps as they are out here. They might only be used a handful of times. Do you know what I mean? But we're quite close to Europe, so we get a lot of Russian firearms. A lot of old Russian firearms come through into Europe, and also like converting blank firing weapons into firing weapons. That's obviously like quite a big thing in the UK too, because they're relatively easy to get your hands on. But I mean, a gun, like my friend tried to commit suicide, and he said it was £550 to get a gun and a full mag of bullets, a 9mm.
Wow.
So it goes to show that in London, firearms are still pretty accessible. And I don't want to say I saw the gun, but I know he's saying the truth. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like guns are still pretty accessible even in London. And the point I was making there with regard to like London is that like no matter what legislation you put in place, people still want to kill each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even in prisons right now.
Oh yeah.
You still get prison shanks. So even in like this environment where the government has said no weapons whatsoever, people don't realize the fact that the government it doesn't really change personal perception, right? To the extent that even in prisons now, like a really awful thing they do in the UK is they put sugar into a kettle and they'll boil the kettle till it's really hot, and you have like a jar of napalm, and like people have been killed that way. Do you know what I mean? Like by throwing that shit on them because it's like napalm, right? And it just goes to show like we are incredibly inventive at hurting one another, and no law will prevent that.
And so yeah, it's been like that for a while. You get drugs, you get anything in prisons, and you're right. They say, hey, it's banned. You can't do anything. You can't do anything in here, but you still get it in there.
Yeah,
Always
government
happens all the
can't
time.
even stop drugs from prisons and
Right.
weapons from being in prisons.
Right.
These are the most controlled environments possible, right?
Right.
So how would they do that on the streets?
Right.
You sound more like an anarchist every day.
No, it's just true.
It's just the truth, yeah.
They just can't. It's
You
always
can't
been like
control everything, even no matter how much enforcement you have.
that. And that's why we always say,
Cool. Now do gun laws. Do you see what I mean? Like, you see what like the base of my theory is like why I dislike all these gun laws, because like we've just established the government can't control it in this very controlled environment. They're completely screwed if they intend to do it out here in the public.
but we've
So-
said the same thing. Always said that. We can't go to that extreme, the extreme that you're talking about. You say don't vote. I say yes, you have to vote. You say don't do anything. You know what? If I didn't want to do anything, I never would have got a concealed carry on campus law passed. And people told me that was impossible. It will never ever happen.
care
The
about
state of Texas, you don't care about it, but someone told me that this will never ever happen, and we were able to get that done. People always tell me you can't. They're always able to get it done because you got to push. If I sat back and didn't do anything, then we'd be sitting here right now saying, "Oh man, I can't carry my gun on my college campus because I didn't do anything to do it." As always, more guns equals less crime. You go out there and you buy yourself a gun. You've been listening to Come and Talking with Michael Cargill.